Hello, everybody. Welcome again to Own Your Breath podcast. I'm Rihanna Yusuf. As agreed, I am still, celebrating women, and I've invited women from different backgrounds to speak on my channel. And today with me, I have Amanda Hart, all the way from UK. She is an intuitive consultant and author. She's written 4 books and contributed to 4 more books all around spirituality, and one of it is her memoir. And she's also a regular columnist for Spiritual Magazine. She's been on television, and you've had your own radio channel on spirituality, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it was for Soul and Spirit Radio, and it was a little while ago, but it was a real eye-opener for me because I had a fear of public speaking. So for me to go into that vulnerable space and speak publicly was a huge change for me, helping people to also find their voice as well. So it was a bit of a change for my life for personal reasons, and also for my clients.
Imagine, yeah, I can imagine. Basically, step into what you actually need.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I think the upshot of it is that I've been working in this space for a long time now, about 25, almost 30 years.
Wow.
And it's about keep diving in and finding our vulnerability to find out what it is that's going on for us and what we need to do to make changes. And it's not about finding that perfect life, that perfect package that makes us happy. It's about really owning our vulnerability and finding what in that moment we need to do to survive. And that's pretty much what I talk about and what I share with my clients and the work that I do.
I really loved it. I mean, I'm going to be honest. Doing this podcast is very triggering. I'm not just this podcast, launching my whole podcast is very triggering for me. I used to be so afraid of public speaking. I'm still afraid, but I've improved a bit. But people always just look at me and they think I speak very well. I'm outspoken. Perhaps when I'm with people in a room live, right? But I have a thing I fear. There's something about me with camera. When I'm on record, it just triggers a lot of my anxiousness. And also, I don't really like my voice to be recorded. Listening to my voice is triggering. But that reason, I know why. That's why I knew the more I have to do this. So not all, but almost every podcast that I do, maybe 3/4 of them, I'll have a bit of hangover and a lot of hangover, but that's where my work is, to dive deep. So anything I fear, I lean more towards, healing deeper and instead of judging myself, admittedly, I will, be critical a bit because sometimes I get nervous, and that's the truth. I find it easier for me to talk when there's audience than just to be speaking like this, But this is how we improve, stepping into our uncomfortable zone.
I applaud you because I find I have a huge respect for people who face their vulnerability and ask themselves, what am I going to do it? And do it anyway. Push past that fear. It's a real sort of Susan Jeffers thing, feel the fear, excuse me, and do it anyway. But it's about taking ownership for it and not hiding from it, and not, doing something that will help take away the pain. And, we deal with a lot of anxiety in our life anyway. We're under super stress from all sorts of expectations from us, but I feel those that really truly own their vulnerability and show up and say, okay, this is painful for me, but I know in my heart that it's good for me, and do it anyway. I really feel that these are the people who really will make a better world, because they're the ones that are wanting to be connected to this world, wanting to make a difference, wanting to be authentic and real. And we can only really create true stability in this world from those that really work from an authentic, vulnerable space.
Goosebumps. You couldn't have said it better. Honestly, you couldn't have said it better. And I'm a huge advocate of vulnerability and authenticity. And you said it right there, you know, and yes, that's a great point for all of us to remember. And to be honest, everything I've done is, you know, I'm scared. And as you say, you know, we have anxiousness, we can't avoid it. And I have a lot, but I just go through it, you know, I have to do it. The more I'm scared, the more I do it. And I shift more into the reason of why I'm doing it instead of perfection, you know, because most of the time comes from shame, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is important, and it's very the fact that you said it's your why, that's really important. I have an equation, and which is if we apply healthy habits, develop our intuition, and apply faith to that, it equals our why. I've just written an article for My Best Holistic Life magazine in Los Angeles, and because the American market doesn't really know what I do, my work, so I simplified it, and this is the equation I stick to.
Can you repeat the equation again for me?
Of course, yeah. It's applying healthy practices, developing intuition, and applying faith that equals our why. And that's really important, because most people are very goal orientated. So they think, right, okay, if I have that big house, that lovely relationship, and I have that ideal job, that will make me happy. But that's not necessarily our why. Our why is what makes us wake up every morning to overcome the vulnerability in ourselves, to make a better life for ourselves and others. And that's how we really truly connect with the whole of humanity. You know, we're not just responsible for ourselves on this planet. We have a ripple effect that affects our loved ones, our situations, you know, and it goes out exponentially. And we don't know how far that goes, but we do know, but through science, that actually we do have an impact on this world. So I really feel that we find our why when we apply that equation. And when I say healthy practices, I mean knowing, excuse me, my throat, knowing what is good for us. I can
offer you a cup of tea.
It's first thing in the morning, and it's my first speaking.
Oh, okay.
It's healthy practices, which could be good food, it could be good sleep, it could be just nourishing ourselves with good friends, it could be reading good books. It doesn't have to be something which is a rigid regime of grueling exercise and education and, you know, what we think we should be doing. It's what is unique to us, what serves our soul. So it is healthy practices, because a lot of people also use exercise and things that they think are healthy practices as addictions or excuses to hide our vulnerability because it's avoidance. Yes, absolutely. From doing our healthy practices, what we do is we trigger the emotions in us which connect with our endocrine system, our chakras, our joy. And when we connect with our joy, we open up the heart space, and the heart space is linked to the right hemisphere of the brain. So the left and right, even though they work cohesively together, they have very different roles. The right is connected to consciousness. The left is connected solely to our past experience. It's to do with our programs. It's our logical side. But consciousness is really the bigger picture, which is helping us to see our best self and what we should be applying to each day of our life to help us to lead us towards more of our authentic state. So healthy practices are really important, and that does trigger the intuitive faculty. So some people find that going for a long walk is a really spiritual experience, or meditation, or reading lots of spiritual material, partaking in workshops, etc. But developing our intuition opens up what we call the T zone, which is our clairvoyance, which is our visual understanding. So that's the dream state, but also how we send pictures to consciousness and receive pictures so that we can see our messages. It's our auditory senses, which is listening to the thoughts. And I'm talking about the thoughts that are from our higher nature, as opposed to the worry state. And then there is our intuition, which is seated at the gut, or the solar plexus, which is our deep-seated feeling. So all of those combined help us to form a language that creates that dialogue between consciousness and ourself. So we start to be aware of these messages, these signs, this synchronicity. It's like a Sharpie. It's like someone highlighting all the little messages that pop up that other people can't see, but it's very, very unique to us. So that language is very important, because it's great wanting to be our authentic self. It's about listening and paying attention and seeing and feeling the feedback we get from consciousness to help us to live that authentic nature.
Oh, so true. Oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm really loving this podcast. I'm like, oh, I'm going to put it on repeat.
Oh, bless you. The last thing I was going to mention is faith. Now, it's like if I gave you a packet of seeds, and you know that they'll be daffodils or a flower that you know, and you put them into the ground and you water them and you nurture them and you let the sun on them, and you know eventually those flowers are going to bloom. And this is what the practices and the applying all of this equation is about. The healthy practices are the seeds, and the seeds, once they're sown, it's knowing that they will grow if you apply the other areas that will help those seeds to grow. So the developing intuition and faith is really important. That's your watering and nurturing, because often what happens is that when we go through challenge, when we go into vulnerability, fear starts to come to the surface. And that's when we start to allow the mind chatter to take precedence. And then we start listening to the fear as opposed to the reality of what's going on, or our still quiet voice, that deep-seated intuition that's telling us everything's all right. And then we just keep feeding more of the negative programming. Applying faith means that despite what's going on, despite us not seeing our seeds actually coming into fruition and not growing yet, it's knowing that if we just turn up and do our healthy practices every day, and we apply the development of intuition, eventually they will just grow on their own. And that's exactly what happens. And this is why I work with clients in over a certain period of time, so that when we start, we get the practices in place, we start developing the intuition, and then we know that if we wait patiently together and we help to apply faith to that equation, the why develops and it just magically unfolds.
Absolutely. So I'm a believer that, we can achieve everything that we want, we put in the work, and we do the deeper healing that we need, the ones that blocking, for us to grow, right? So someone telling me, so you guarantee that you can, you can help people to achieve what they want. I don't guarantee anything, but I do guarantee that if you do the inner work and consistency is so important. If you are consistent and you believe, you will get what you want. It's not overnight, but yes, I'm a believer that you will.
Yeah. It's, I mean, whether you focus on the things that you want or you focus on the things you don't want, you will get what you focus on most of all. And people do, we've heard this message time and time again. But what a lot of people say to me is, it's painful. It takes so long. How do I know it's happening? How do I know I'm doing the right thing? So I simplify it, because if we do the things that we know, that if we turn up to and enjoy and know that at least we're making progress in some way, at least that in that the very essence of that in itself is showing that we're actually doing something constructive and positive and giving and self-loving for ourselves anyway. Absolutely. So but the byproduct of that is our why. It tends to then materialize, because it's not a logical process. We can't expect life to give us just cards that will give us guarantees that we will get the life that we want, because then there's no growth. As human beings, we're designed to come in through struggle, and we are designed to struggle throughout our life in a way that helps shape us to become our best selves. And I think that we're in a society now where there is too much that is being offered to us to help us to bypass how uncomfortable we are, whether that be through surgery, whether it be through quick fixes, whether it's fast results, whether it's anything that's superficial that will help us to bypass what we're uncomfortable with. Eventually the soul, that part of us which is still a huge part, fundamental part of us, will reject it all and say, but you haven't worked on this part, and I will have to go back until I grow into that space, which is my authentic nature. So we either struggle with it, and through determination we grasp onto anything that will help us avoid it, or we give into it and say, okay, I'm vulnerable, let's just give into this and see where this will take me.
Beautiful, very beautiful. Thank you. So Amanda, please tell me what exactly, or tell us, what exactly do you do as an intuitive consultant? So it's I'm glad you asked me that, Rianne, because people just think that I created this role, and that I was I designed it because it was something I always wanted to do. I was destined to be an interior designer. That was my role. Really, as a child, I wanted to write. But my father said to me, oh, don't be so silly. As an entrepreneur, he's a successful entrepreneur, as an interior designer himself. He said, you'll never make any money writing silly stories. You can put that aside. You're going to college, you're going to university, and you're going to run the family business, and that's what you're going to do. So I had this suppressing of my creative self. I had this real desire to write and share stories, and I used to do a lot of role playing in front of my neighbors and all the adults around me, my family and my friends, and there was a lot of drama, but it was always story based, and it was always to bring joy to people. I grew up in a very troubled childhood. It was a very violent childhood, but despite that, I found my joy, and I found my joy through vulnerability, because I realized that there was something that I had to do to survive. So I found joy, and making people happy was the most rewarding experience, and it was my survival technique. Then when I was an adult, I thought that freedom would give... Sorry to interrupt you. One second. You said you find your joy through vulnerability.
Yes.
By making people happy.
Yes. Yeah. I realized that it was my way of seeing that we all had something that connected us. Now, that when there was violence that was going on in the house, and when I was in extreme fear, there was a disconnect. And I realized that I was learning that there was, this was a fearful world, and I had to survive. And so I realized that by being joyful and seeing that I could often make adults around me feel that joy, I realized it connected us. So I knew that there was a glue, there was something that connected us as human beings. So I learned that at an early stage.
I was just curious about which part of you making other people happy is the vulnerable part. I'm just trying to understand which part of it is the vulnerable part.
Yeah, by being joyful, sometimes even despite adults, because the most important thing for me at that time was to survive. And I was taught to hide away, to be fearful, to be shameful of who I was, to be quiet, to be still, to not have a voice. And that's what I was shown. But there was something in me that made me realize that actually, despite that, if I allowed my joy to come through, I would survive it, because the terror of trying to survive and hide away, I knew that I wouldn't make it through that childhood. So something taught me that there was something that lit those adults up around me and actually gave me respite. So it not only did I feel that utter joy and connection with them, and love them despite what they did to me, it allowed them to see the joy in themselves despite their vulnerability. So it connected us all, and it kept me. It was like puddle jumping. We call it puddle jumping. We would have moments of joy, and then we would dive into that horrible, fearful world again, and then there would be more joy, and then there would be that fearful world. So I knew that I had this real yin and yang that was going on in my childhood. And as I grew into adulthood, I assumed that I'd have freedom. I could go out there and be whatever I wanted to be, and, you know, make that lovely shiny package of a life that I desired, that would be far from, you know, the terrors of my childhood. But because of the conditioning in my mind, because of all the programs that I'd learned, all I kept doing was attracting more and more negative situations, very violent situations, very traumatic situations, until eventually it came to me that even though I was reaching out to, you know, to establishments to help me through orthodox means, I felt very unheard. I felt that I was unwanted, unloved, and I was in a very, very negative world of spiraling out of control, very alone. So I realized that I had to do something about it. And the first thing I started to do was to find about how I could love myself, how I could start to give self-love. And it was through falling into spiritual practices that reminded me that actually as a child, I've been very intuitive because I spent a lot of time out in nature. So I drew on the love of being around animals and nature, and being around people who were very loving, who were my friends or extended members of the family. So I knew what love was, and I wanted more of that. And I knew that I gave that to myself because I was in control of that. So for selfish reasons, I was looking after myself, going through a lot of change, and I had children at the time, and people around me could see that I was changing. So mothers at the school would ask me, well, you know, you've changed, what's happening, you know, what are you doing to yourself, because we can obviously see there's something going on. And they would be curious, and they asked me if I could help them. So I started with 1, 2, maybe 3 ladies, and then it formed into a little group. I had a little shop at the time. People were more curious about coming to see me than they were about buying my goods. So eventually I decided to stop what I was doing with my shop. I studied and trained, I researched, and I looked into these spiritual practices more so I could have a sound foundation, so I could give something which was more authentic and more credible. And that's really how my journey started. And this was some 25, 26 years ago now. So from then, it just developed more and more so until I am where I am today. So it's just been a journey. I didn't do it for anyone else. It was for me purely to survive. But then the upshot of that was that vulnerability showing up and changing helped me to help others. And that's how I discovered my why.
Beautiful, beautiful. How coincident, but you know, it's not, well, nothing is coincidence, but it's the same. So I used to have a boutique, a clothing boutique. It's a vintage store. So, but people don't really come to see me to buy my things. They really come to talk to me about their problems, their struggles, things like that, you know. And I ask them, why don't you tell, you know, someone? No, I can't, you know. So many times. And so in the end, I knew I'm going to be this woman, but in the end, I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready. The time is now, because I don't think I can sustain longer this energy, you know, people coming and, you know, because there must be some sort of balance, right, in the energy exchange. So yeah, it's funny that it's similar in that sense.
And that's exactly the sort of shop I had. I sold vintage clothes, and it was old secondhand designer dresses, and it was fantastic. But I think there's an energy about it, isn't there? It's that, you know, changing something old into something new, making something, you know, it's conversion of energy, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, you know, I used to shop because I used to live in Dubai and I fly a lot. I was a flight attendant. So I used to shop in Portobello a lot. Yeah. So when I quit my job, so I created something like Portobello because I cannot fly, right? And it's funny, over the years, as I shift more towards what I'm doing now, wellness, I get rid a lot of the older things just because I needed new energy. I need more to clear things. You know, there's a still tiny bit of vintage stuff. I still love vintage, but I just cannot have too much vintage in my place anymore. I need to bring in more new lights, more new energy. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. So, so the offering. So, what kind of the offerings that you're giving is readings? Or...
No. So what I do is I work with people on a one-to-one basis. So people will come to me and present what's currently going on for them. And it's often something that they are going through, which they've struggled for a long time. They've tried all other methods. They've tried orthodox as well as spiritual practices, and they can't get to the root cause of it. I was fascinated with working with the mind, and I got to a point in 2003 when I had meningococcal septicemia, and it was very serious. And I have had repercussions since then, but that's the vulnerability.
What your sickness?
Meningitis.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So I had the full septicemia. It was a life-changing moment for me. And I realized then in the hospital, in that vulnerable state, having very young dependent children under the age of 4, I realized that I have created this at some level. So what am I going to do about it? And I made a vow that when I came out of hospital, because I was determined to, even though despite them saying that I wasn't, or I would have long-term conditions, I do, but I manage them well because that's my vulnerability that keeps holding me and anchoring me here in this world. But I was determined to find solutions as to why I was creating this in the mind. And I attracted people then that who were my teachers, who helped me to understand about the power of the mind. And I went more into that field. So I'd started initially with healing and very deep-seated spiritual practices, which then merged into working with the mind. So I work with the power of the mind, the subconscious, to work out what's currently going on for us, where this comes from, because it's always linked with the past. And then we end up with why. And going through that vulnerability helps us to learn about what we need to do about it. It's not about hiding from it, because a lot of people have gone through, struggle with relationships that don't work, or jobs that they can't seem to get any satisfaction with, or addictions, anything that is out of balance for some time. And then they stop and they say, I can't do this anymore. And that's when we look at this and we say, right, okay, you're just ready for this now. That's, it's not a time to say to ourselves, okay, I've failed because I haven't seen this earlier. It is right timing for us to say, what am I going to do about it? So I work with people on a one-to-one. I work in groups. I do development groups. I run retreats, and I write books which help to understand who I am, what my story is, and why I do this, and the theories behind what I work with, and apply that. So I've got a series of books through Orion Publishing, which is the Talking with Angels series, which is specifically for people who understand that they're getting angelic messages or they believe in angels. And it's for people who want to develop that deeper connection with them. So I did actually write a particular series of books for this market, so that people would understand there is something going on. We are open to these messages, and why, that's the most important thing. Why am I getting these messages? So I help people to develop their intuition more.
Since on that, I saw that book. I didn't read it. Can you tell me a bit more, like, how do people actually can speak or see the angels? Do they just get it, or is there a way that they can develop to be able to communicate with them or to be connected to them?
Yeah, so we all have the ability. Some people recognize it because we all have different beliefs. So what I do is I write or I teach in a way that helps people from all walks of life, from all different beliefs and backgrounds, from all different religions, to understand that there is a generic thing that's going on with us as a human being. And that is, we have an incredible mind, which helps us to tap into this huge source of energy, which can help us to live a better life.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about a better life as in a nice shiny package that's delivered from Amazon, which helps us to deliver this beautiful life that we think we want. It's the life that we are destined to live if we allow our true, authentic nature to come to the surface. And so by developing our mind, we can then be a source of inspiration. We can send our intentions of what we want, because you can't expect, consciousness just doesn't decide that, you or I deserve to have a better day because yesterday was a bit, crappy. It only honors what we ask for. So we have to open this telecommunication system up so that we can actually send our messages to say, right, I'm ready now. I want a better life. I want to find the solutions to what's going on for me. I want to be healthy. I want to be happier. And then we also need to be able to receive those messages. So it's a two-way communication system. And there are practices that I teach people which help develop that. Because it's like a muscle. If you want to get fit, I would take you to the gym and I would take you through different exercises, and over time your muscles would develop and get nice and lean and strong and firm. And that's exactly what we do with the brain. It's not the gray matter that we're working on per se, but it is a muscle, and it needs to be worked on. It's like the heart. If we're going to work on anything, if we invest enough time in it, then it will actually show results. So the healthy practices are developing the mind so that we can have a better communication. It fine-tunes all our intuitive faculties, so the clairvoyance, the clairaudience, and the clairsentience, that feeling, so that we become aware. It's like watching a television program which is a little bit fuzzy, and then we're tuning it in, and suddenly we see it in HD. We go, oh wow, I didn't see that lovely, the green shimmering, trees, the leaves, and the water on the lake shimmering like that, like diamonds on the water. We start to see things ping, and those things are specific.
Fine-tune this.
Yes, that's exactly what we do.
Okay.
So
how do you actually fine-tune this, our brain to be able to be in alignment?
Okay, so to do that, you have to do something on a daily basis. Say, for example, if you're having your teeth straightened, this is a modern day first world problem. If you went to someone like the dentist who decided to straighten your teeth, and you put a shield in to straighten your teeth, you'd have to do that every day for maybe 20, 30 weeks, because eventually you'll train the teeth to get straighter and straighter and straighter. What we're doing is we're doing something every day with the brain, so that every single day that little practice is fine-tuning the brain and fine-tuning our intuitive faculties, those 3 intuitive faculties, until eventually we become sharper and more coherent and more understanding and perceiving of those messages that start to ping. Now, we could say, but weren't those messages there before, but I couldn't see them? Or are they coming to us now because we've developed our intuition? It doesn't matter. The fact that now we're becoming more aware. For an example, I'm working with a client at the moment who years ago wanted to make a massive life change, and she did. She changed everything. She moved location. It was a real risk. She went into a very vulnerable state. She had no job, nowhere to live, but she knew she wanted to move to this location. And as she made the decision to move there, and she saw it in a dream, she moved there. And as she did that, she started putting out to consciousness, I want a job. She got the perfect role. And then she was offered a house which was rent-free because they wanted someone to live there while this guy went off sailing around the world. So I started working with her again, because she's now making a decision about moving again. Now, she's done this before, but we go into that vulnerable space and we want someone to hold our hand. So I help that person to go through the process of knowing that if they keep applying the faith and all the practices, that they'll get there. And it's not about knowing where we're going to end up, which is our why. It's developing the practices, developing the intuition, applying faith, and then you find out where you're going to end up, what job you're going to do, who your people are, where your place is in this world. It's a completely different concept to the one that we are trained in as human beings as we come through our education system, and also how we are as human beings, which is we need food, shelter, warmth, and security first. Then we need loving relationships, and then we do the self-actualization, which is discovering who we are. I say, and I've written this in my third book, Talking with Angels of Wealth, I turn it on its head, and that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I say self-actualization leads to loving relationships, leads to everything that we want in the way of security, love, shelter, warmth, etc., etc.
I agree. I totally agree. Yes, absolutely. Like I'm so glad we are in the same page. Like people get shocked, like almost I'm weird, but I totally believe, like if we had this great awareness and we work just ourselves, it's just us from inside. We will everything, and we become more open to receiving. Really, we begin to attract. And like you, I've gone through pretty serious traumatic incidents in my life. And not desirable situations, as I've manifested amazing things in my life. But truly, I hate to say this, but it's the truth that I manifest all of them. So I do teach manifestation class, but I call it raising vibration, because really we are working in vibration.
Yes.
And I make it known to them that I'm not claiming that I just attract. I've just manifested great things in my life. I've manifested undesirable things in my life, but they all come from similar formula.
Yes, yeah. And that's an interesting, I'm glad you brought that up, Rihanna, because people when they start to create, put the healthy practices in place and start to make intentions to change their life, they suddenly see things popping up that they don't like. And that's when they start to have a wobble, and they say, well, I understand what I want to achieve, and I understand that, and I like that bit, but I don't like that, and I'm very fearful of that. And why is that happening now? And that's why we have to apply the faith, because despite outward appearances of what goes on around us, we have to expect eggs to be broken if we're going to make an omelette. We have to expect uncomfortable situations if we're going to grow as human beings, because those uncomfortable situations are our friend. Those situations are the opportunity for us to grow and get ourselves to question, what's going on for me and what do I need to do about this, rather than hide, because that's how we are challenged as human beings to grow into what we are becoming. Yes. And that's the thing, when we start with the problem and we want to end up with the end result, most people want to do it in a way that's really comfortable for them. They still want to be the same person because they don't really want to go through the uncomfortableness of growth. And that's the thing. If you sign up for this, you're already in an uncomfortable situation, because if you've come to me with this problem, you're already uncomfortable. So why don't you just get comfortable with the uncomfortableness and get on with it, and then see where you end up? Because that's what I feel that is the most valuable information you can feed somebody. It's not going to be an easy ride, but it will be uncomfortable. But if you get comfortable with it, you'll be okay.
Absolutely. Another thing that that people, I mean, when I say this, people kind of like puzzled, because I said, I know you're going through tough time, it's so uncomfortable. I don't mean it in a bad way, but I'm actually excited for you. They were like, huh? But you know what I mean? I'm excited because if you stay on, and I'm here to guide you, because you are about to level up. There's so much great things waiting for you. That's the only reason you're being given these challenges, this transformation. But you have to stick with it. You got to trust something greater is coming out of this chaos, I say. So that's why I'm excited for you, because you're the chosen one. So that's how I tell them, basically.
It is like a magnetic thing. It's there is a concept I see that works through the transformation process with people, and as you start to accept and send your intentions out, that, you know, accept that you want to change, so you attract the things that will challenge you to help you with that change.
Yeah.
And that's the gift.
Yes,
It's come to
absolutely.
you in a way that and you wouldn't have attracted it. That's the one thing I always say to people. You wouldn't have attracted this uncomfortable situation if you couldn't handle it. That's the thing that people find probably the most challenging. You know, why would I ask for this uncomfortable situation? Why would I ask my husband to be like that, or my sister to do this to me, or my boss to do, you know, change his mind and do this? We've asked for it at a certain level, at a subconscious level. So if we've asked for it, therefore there is a solution to it, and we have the ability to overcome it, and there will be a reward for it. Yeah. So I say it's like having lottery tickets. If people just shy away and try and ignore the uncomfortable part, it's like having a load of lottery tickets and just throwing them in the bin and not checking to see if you've won any money. There is a benefit and a reward for every single thing that happens, and it's up to us whether we take that on and do something about it.
True, I totally agree. Amanda, you mentioned about this year is being a prominent year.
Yes, yeah. So 2023, yeah, I'll talk to you a little bit about that, because that's I was always fascinated with numerology, and I'm not a numerologist by any means, but the one thing that was actually my saving grace, that's the spiritual opening for me, I guess you could say, was one day I was, and this was back in the early 90s, I was in a very, very desperate situation, and very alone. And a leaflet came through the door, or I think it was actually an article in a local newspaper, actually. And I just opened the page, and there was this article that said, do you want a numerology reading? Now, I'd never, apart from my grandmother always reading the stars to me, I never had any interest in anything spiritual whatsoever. I didn't realize that as a child I did it naturally, but something in that request, you know, was really calling me. And I didn't have very much money at the time. It cost £20 to have this report done. So I scraped together everything I had, sent off for it, and this report came back to me. And it was a report based on my numbers, based on my name and my date of birth, etc. And this report was terrible. I started reading it, and I was appalled about how disconnected I was to the world, how I didn't really care about the news and otherworldly stuff. I was just very focused on my own destructive self and everything, all the sabotage that had happened and all the stuff that was going on for me. And I felt huge shame. I felt this horrendous feeling of disconnection. And I think it brought a lot of my childhood back to me, which reminded me of how I was when I felt disconnected by the adults around me, but then how it reminded me, well, hang on, what did I do then? What did I do to survive? And I remembered that I found my joy, and I found the joy in other people by connecting us. So I thought, well, I've got to get myself connected with people again. This is shameful. So what can I do? And for some reason, I had this inspiration to write everything which was the absolute opposite of what this report had said. And I kept focusing on that. So I threw the report away and kept reading this as an affirmation of the person I knew was within me, because I knew that person as a child. And over a period of time, I started to see magical messages that would come to me. And I thought, well, what's this coincidence? Why is this happening? And what's the reason for this? Because I see that this is a message somehow. It's meant for me, and I need to do something about it. And so I was fascinated with how numerology had an impact on us as human beings. And I worked with a lot of numerologists, people who taught me that there is a significance behind the power of numbers. And, huge corporations make business decisions based on having meetings at particular dates because it is aligned with the power of the numbers. So, it is a real science. And 2023, when you add the numbers together, because you always make a singular number out of any numbers. So 2023 added together is 7.
Yeah.
Now, 7 number is the spiritual number. It's the number that reminds us of our really deep-rooted, authentic nature. And because of we always work towards the next number. So all of 2022 would have been building to the energy of 2023. So we'll find that a lot of people during 2022 were preparing to let go of conditioning and restraints and situations and people that no longer serve them, because they really truly wanted to move towards their authentic nature, preparing for 2023. So a lot of people are now really either honing in on that and finding a deeper authentic state, or they are working on more spiritual practices, or more to do in alignment with their purpose. It's a real year of change for a lot of people. They're becoming more awakened, more alert, more aware, and more mindful. So it's a really good transformational year for people, especially if they are 7s, and I'm a 7 number. My birth date is a 7, so you can work out your life path number by adding all the numbers of your birth date together. And usually when you have 2 together that are aligned, so mine's a 7 and it's a 7 year, it's a very impactful year. So you'll find that a lot of people are going through great change this year for authentic reasons.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I personally feel this year is going to be a very powerful year for me. In a good way. That's how I feel.
Yeah,
and
fantastic.
I think for everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and you say it's especially for women.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess it's not that men don't have this ability, but women work more on a peripheral level. So they're more aware of the bigger picture, whereas men are designed, but the very nature of them is to hunt and, and they're tunnel vision, because their goal is to go retrieve, bring back, and keep the survival of the camp. But for women, we are more intuitive and more aware, and we have to, deal with a lot more. I.e., if in the camp we're looking after the babies and looking after, being medicine woman and making sure that everyone's loved and the community is all together. And that's we're a nurturing species. So women tend to be more in touch with their nurturing self. And 7 is all about the authentic nurturing of the self and the nurturing of humanity. And so it is a very feminine number, where it comes through and helps us to enhance the lives of everybody, male and female, in all genders, in all shapes and forms. It doesn't matter. But it is a feminine number, which helps us to really connect with our emotions and our inner self, our authentic nature, to be who we want to be, whether we want to come out from hiding behind what people expect us to be, and show finally that this is who I am and be proud of it. It doesn't matter, but this is the year for people to really come out and shine and be okay about being authentic and vulnerable.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Yes, lean more towards wide and not perfection, because you're really enough simply by being who you are.
Yeah.
Okay, and you mentioned about trauma, which I find that's one thing. We talked a bit last week. Trauma is I love these words that you said. Trauma is an invitation, to a bigger part of ourselves. Yes.
Yeah. It's I describe people that have gone through trauma or have gone through adversity they have stretched the parameters of who they are, because they've really experienced the whole spectrum of the emotions. Dr. Bach, who produced all the flower remedies, he was a biologist, and he was a depressive. He suffered from depression. He found that nature, he gravitated towards nature. And he wondered, well, why does nature make me feel so happy and alive? And for somebody who goes through the trauma of really deep, invasive, depression and trauma, goes into a very, very low emotional state. And he wanted to understand, well, if nature can make me feel like this, surely I can replicate that and help other people feel like that. So he actually introduced these particular signature flower remedies, which when we ingest them, it wakes up every cell in our body and helps remind us of our blueprint. So it switches from the negative conditioning to our blueprint, our true nature, how we feel detached from our negativity, our conditioning, the traumas. So he talks about the spectrum of emotional radio, which starts at the top, the very top, which is joy. It moves down. There's 38 different human emotions. He says it. So there's the joy at the top, then it goes down to boredom in the middle, and then it goes all the way down to guilt. And guilt is the lowest emotion that we can experience. And people will say, well, isn't it jealousy or anger, or rage? It's not. Guilt actually holds us in concrete boots, so we don't actually do anything. We go into a freeze stage. So you've got the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So guilt holds us frozen. We can't actually do anything, and that's the worst state to be in, because we sit there with our shame. That guilt just is just all encompassing. It locks us in concrete boots, and we can't move. So when we go through trauma, when we go through challenge, often it's fear that comes to the surface. And because of the very nature of us as human beings, to survive it, we will find ways to cope. We will find any way to run, to fight or flee from this danger, from this uncomfortableness. And that allows us to start to discover different emotions. So we've gone through all the lower echelon of the emotional radio, and hopefully most of the time it will drive us to find the higher emotional aspects of ourselves. So some people come into this world and they have a good life and they don't really want for anything. They are very well supported, and they just skim across what we call the periphery, the sort of the midline of life. They don't want to be too joyful because they like to keep it nice and safe, and they don't want to be too scared by life, so they won't make themselves vulnerable, or won't challenge themselves, and they won't put themselves into vulnerable situations. So there is that experience, and those people really have not experienced the whole spectrum. So what I'm saying, that's not wrong by any means, but what I'm saying is that people who have faced adversities and traumas have pretty much tasted all the emotions that there are of the human condition, and we are designed to experience them all.
Yes.
And because life has become so fast-paced and easy, and it's made for us so that we can actually choose so much more to escape the stuff that we don't like, it hasn't really given us the opportunity to experience the whole spectrum of our human condition, and on an emotional level. And I think if we miss that in life, we've missed a huge opportunity for growth. Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more. One of the main thing I work is through emotions, through suppressed emotions, becomes my pathway to help them further. Yeah, yes. I love what you say. So before I wrap up this podcast, Aminda, can you tell us, how can one develop their intuition?
Yeah, so I would say do what feels right for you. Some people love to read, some people like to watch podcasts, some people want to learn about meditation. First of all, I would sit down quietly. I would write down, because it's really good to start using the brain, using the mind, and accessing what is it that I need, because we all have different strengths in our different intuitive faculties. Write down what we get drawn to. If we're a reader, we love to read, you might want to be drawn to books that will teach you. If you love to watch TV, if you love to watch podcasts, it might be something visual for you. So go with what feels right for you. Some people like to work in group dynamics. I feel that it's really powerful when you work with group dynamics, and I love to run groups. So taking time out, maybe going to a retreat once a year, maybe going to weekends or a day out, you know, once in a blue moon, just to go and be with like-minded people in an empowerment group or a spiritual development group. So write down, just sit calmly and quietly and write down all the things that you feel would help you. And then from that, then you can take it a step further and say, right, what am I going to do about it? And make a decision about what you're going to do every day, which just ticks one little small box, or, you know, it's a bite-sized chunk. But what I would say, if you want to do something and start doing it now, I use what I call traditionally bookends. First thing in the morning, before you open your eyes, you lay there in bed, you're aware that you're coming into the world, sit there and think about the core values, the real deep-seated values that you feel about yourself. What's really important, like love is everything, or you love to live purposefully. And think about those core values and see yourself going through your day living those core values. And then at night, and then you can get on with your day. And at night, just as you're going to sleep, you close your eyes. It's the last thing you're doing. And I want you to then think about all the things you're grateful for in your life now. So what you're doing is you're working with optimum the optimum times of the day, which work when your brain is in alpha, which is open to consciousness. Consciousness is listening. By being grateful for what you have shows consciousness you want more of that. By developing your core values and telling consciousness that this is who I am, consciousness doesn't know whether you're imagining it or whether you're actually living it, so it has to deliver, because it's all consciousness works on the present time, doesn't work on future or past. By doing that, those times also has what I call a bookend effect. The night state blocks and the negative thoughts and situations that have occurred that day, and it acts as a dam. So it comes to a halt. It stops all of that and says, this is the last thing I'm thinking before I'm going to sleep. That takes precedence. The first thing you think in the morning, which is your core values about yourself, is the first thing you're thinking, which you're setting up as a precedent for your day. Yep. But not only that, you're setting up a precedent for your future. So you're setting up a good day, you're setting up a good night's sleep, but you're also setting up your future. And by doing every single day, consciousness says, oh, this is a habit. This is the habit that she is now becoming. Therefore, she has to be it. Therefore, we have to deliver. And that tunes in the intuitive faculties as a byproduct. And that then starts to show results. Okay?
Beautiful. Yes. I look forward to listen again to your podcast. So much information. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. And thank you for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Of course. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for listening with me, Amanda Hart. You can find Amanda through her website, amanda-hart, hart.co.uk. I will also be sharing more different ways that you can connect to Amanda. Thank you, everyone. Till the next one, I'm Rihanna Yusuf. Thank you. Bye.